Yeah, welcome. So the topic we'll be discussing in this lecture is using first order logic. So last class we have discussed the basics about first order logic. So we'll be continuing on that. So this lecture will be discussing some examples for first order logic. We'll be taking certain cases and we'll be discussing like how that can be represented in first order logic. So to start with, in knowledge representation, the term domain is used to represent some part of the world. So if you take a particular problem, in that problem will be specific about few objects, and whatever the objects we are dealing in a given problem, those objects are called as domain. So domain is some part of the world about which we wish to express the knowledge. So domain is a part of the world about which we wish to express the knowledge. So this is one way of defining domain. Fine. Now let us see like first how we can add information or how we can add knowledge to the knowledge base using first order logic. So basically we can add knowledge to the first order logic using assertions and by using queries. So sentences can be added to the knowledge base using an assertion called tell. So 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 these are some typical example. Say for example, if you want to add this info that John is a king to the knowledge base, and if you want to represent that in first order logic, then that can be done something like this: tell of KB, king of John. So here tell is assertion. So this basically we are adding a fact to the knowledge base. So we are adding a fact to the knowledge base that John is a king. Now this is a representation in first order logic. Similarly, if you want to represent that Richard is a person, and tell KB, person of Richard. And if you want to represent that all kings are persons, then that can be represented as tell KB, for all x, king of x implies person of x. Now this is a generic rule which we are adding to the knowledge base. So by this we are informing the knowledge base that if somebody is a king, then he is also a person, right? Similarly, see this is for adding fact to the knowledge base. Like that, we can also query the knowledge base. So we can also to query the knowledge base, we use ask. So using ask, we can query the knowledge base. For example, we can query the knowledge base something like this: ask KB, king of John. So basically, we are asking the knowledge base: is John is a king? So in this case, it will return true. In this case, it will return true. So questions asked with ask are called as queries or goals. So these type of questions are called as queries or they are called as goals. And see, and this is another example. There is a query: ask KB, person of John. So we are asking whether John is a person. Yes, John is a person. So it should return true. So when we are asking queries, we can also use quantification symbols. Quantifications like for all or there exist. We can also query something like this: ask KB, there exists X, person of X. So basically we are asking the knowledge base, is there at least one object who is a person? Is there at least one object who is a person? Like that we are asking. So in that case, it will return true. But for this type of query, we may not expect true as the answer. For this type of query, we may not expect true as the answer. We may want to know the values of X. We may want to know for which object the person is applicable. So, so this may not be the appropriate result. But actually, if you ask like this, ask KB, there exists X, person of X, it will return true, because at least there is one. If there is at least one X who is a person, then it will return true. But in these cases, here we may not be expecting true as the answer. We want to know who is that person, right? So if you get true as the answer, then it is something like this: It is something like you are asking somebody, can you tell me the time? So the intention of this question is you want the time. But if that person responds with yes, and if he doesn't tell the time, but he just say yes, then the purpose is not served. This is also something like this. So here we don't want yes or no as the reply. Here we want yes or no as the reply. That's it. But here we want to know who is that X. So in that case, we should not use ask. Rather, uh, we have some other, what do you call? We have some other function which is called as ask vars. Okay, so if you don't want true or false as a result, then you have to use ask vars. So ask vars of kb comma person of x. There is a close bracket here, right? So now, so if you are asking the knowledge base, is there somebody who is a person? Is there some x who is a person in the knowledge base? So if you use ask vars, now it will not return true as an answer or false as an answer. Rather, it will give a stream of answers. It will give a stream of answers. So it will return all those x who are persons. So as per our original example of King John and Richard, it will return two answers. It will return that x can take the value of either John or x can take the value of Richard, because John is also a person and Richard is also a person. Okay. So this type of answer is called a substitution or binding list. So whenever for a query, especially with ask queries, if you get a stream of answers, then this stream of answers are called as substitution or binding list. Because here X can be binded with either with John or with Richard. Fine. So with this introductory, let us now get into, so whatever we have discussed is we are not, so the objective of this lecture is to discuss some examples on first order logic. So far we have not get into that. So far we have just discussed like how knowledge can be added to the knowledge base and how we can query something from the knowledge base. Now we will get into the actual examples. So the first example we'll be discussing will be in kinship domain. Kinship means relationship. So it is something family relationship. So it is, so kinship means it is the family relationship. So here the domain that we consider is family relationship. So the objects in our domain are people, and we use two unary predicates. These are male and female, which can be connected with any individual. And these are the other kinship relations we use. And all these are binary predicates. These other kinship relations, all these are binary predicates. Parent, it is applicable on two objects. Sibling, it is also applicable on two objects. Brother, sister, child, daughter, son, spouse, wife, husband, grandparent, grandchild, cousin, aunt, and uncle. So these are some of the binary predicates which we'll be using in the examples that we'll be discussing. Apart from this, we'll be using two functions. One is mother, the other one is father. So mother of X, it will return the person who is the mother of X. If P is the mother of X, then mother of X will return P. Okay. Similarly, father of Y, if F is the father of Y, then it will return F, right? So these two are functions. So we are using two unary predicates, male, female, and these many binary predicates and two functions, mother and father. So with this intro, let us discuss some examples. Say we want to represent this fact to our knowledge base. One's mother is one's female parent. One's mother is one's female parent. Then how this can be represented using first order logic? For all m comma c, mother of c equal to m. That is, so mother of c is a function. So the mother of c is some person. His mother is m, which means that bidirectionally it is equivalent to that m is a female. So that is obvious. Female of m, and m is the parent of c, right? And parent of m comma c. Okay. So c is child, right? So mother of the child is what? Who is m? Which from this what we can understand is m is a female, and also m is the parent of c, right? So this is how this info can be represented in first order logic. Say the next one. We want to represent one's husband is one's male spouse. One's husband is one's male spouse. So for all w comma h, if H is the husband of W, husband of H comma W, that is if H is the husband of W, so from this bidirectionally it is equivalent that H is a male, H is a male, and H is the spouse of W, right? From this you can also derive the other one. One's wife is one's female spouse. You can try writing it. Okay. And so this is how we represent this statement using first order logic. Next, say we want to represent this male and female or disjoint categories. That is, if somebody is a male, then they are not female. So for all X, male of X implies not female of X. So if X is a male, it's not implies, then it is bidirectionally equivalent to say that X is not female. And here is another example. Parent and child are inverse relations. That is, if P is the parent of C, then C is the child of P. So for all P comma C, parent of P comma C, which means P is the parent of C, it is equivalent to say that C is the child of P. Right? So this statement can be represented in first order logic like this. And the next example is a grandparent is a parent of one's parent. So if you want to say that a grandparent is a parent of one's parent, this can be represented something like this. For all G comma C, G represents grandparent, C represents a child or grandchild, grandparent of G comma C. So it means G is the grandparent of C. G is the grandparent of C is bidirectionally equivalent to saying that there exists some P such that G is the parent of P. G is the parent of P and P is the parent of C. Okay, because C is what? C is the grandchild of G. So there should be some P such that G is the parent of P and P is the parent of C. So which means that a grandparent is a parent of one's parent. A sibling is another child of one's parent. So this can be represented something like this. For all X comma Y, sibling of X comma Y. That is, if X is the sibling of Y, then it means that, so this is not 6, it means that X is not equal to Y, is bidirectionally equivalent to. For all X comma Y, sibling of X comma Y, which means X is a sibling of Y, is bidirectionally equivalent to say that X is not equal to Y. So they are sibling. So it means they both are not same. X is not equal to Y, and there exists P, and there exists a P such that P is the parent of X and also P is the parent of Y. So because the statement what it says, sibling is another child of one's parent. So for all X comma Y, sibling of X comma Y is bidirectionally equivalent to saying that X not equal to Y, and there exists P such that P is the parent of X and P is also the parent of Y. Similarly, numbers also we can be represent. So that's it about our discussion on kinship domain. Next, we'll be discussing some examples on numbers. So numbers also can be represented using what you call first order logic. So here is an example. Natural numbers can be defined recursively, something like this. Natural number of 0. Here we are saying that 0 is a natural number. So this is using first order logic. We are adding this fact to the knowledge base. The fact is, what fact we are adding? The fact says that 0 is a natural number. That's what we are saying. Now, how will we add other natural numbers? Other natural numbers can be added recursively, something like this. For this is actually a recursive statement. For all n, natural number of n implies natural number of s of n. This s of n represents successor of n. This s of n represents successor of n. Now for all n, you apply 0 to this. So when you apply 0 for all n, natural number of n. So natural number of 0 implies what? Natural number of s of n. What is s of 0? S of 0 is 1. So natural number of so when you take natural number of 0 from natural number of 0, actually you are deriving 1. Natural number 1. 1 is a natural number. Now when you apply 1, to this, that is natural number of s of 1. What is s of 1? 2. Now when you apply 2 to this equation, it will imply natural number of s of 2, right? So what is s of 2? S of 2 is 3. So like that we can derive all numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. Okay. So the natural numbers are 0, s of 0, s of 0, and so on. Right? S of 0 is 1, s of 0 is 2, and so on. We also need axioms to constrain the successor function. So if you want to add some constraints, for all n, 0 not equal to s of n. So we are saying that 0 is not equal to s of n. Yeah. So none of the s of n will be equivalent to 0, right? So even if s of n is 0, even if n is 0, s of n will be 1. For all m comma n, m not equal to n implies s of m not equal to s of n, right? So that is true. For all m comma n, if m is not equal to n, implies that s of m also will be not equal to s of m. If m is 5 and n is 7, then s of m will be 6 and s of n will be 8. Okay. So we can define addition in terms of successor function, something like this. For all m, natural number of m implies 0 plus 0 comma m, which means we are adding 0 with m, which is m. So natural number of m is natural number of m is nothing but it's m itself. That's what it says, this statement. Okay. Here we are defining sum in some other way. For all m comma n, natural number of m, let us say that m is a natural number and also n is a natural number. Let us say m is a natural number and also n is a natural number, right? Okay. So then what can we do? Then this is represented as plus s of m comma n. So now we are applying that successor function only to m, not to n. So m is incremented by 1 and then the incremented m and n were added, right? So this can also be represented like this, s of plus m comma n plus within bracket m comma n. So first we are adding m and n, and then to that sum 1 is incremented. Okay. So S represents successor. To that sum, we are taking the next one, right? Okay. So you may wonder like why we are doing this successor part, because this is just addition. But why we are doing this successor? So this successor we are doing because here we have defined like this. Here natural number we are defined as whenever you call natural number of 1, it will automatically take the natural number of s of n, right? If it is natural number of 1, then it will become natural number of s of 1. S of 1 is nothing but 2. Are you getting? So that's what here also, here we want to define sum. So we sum and then we increment it by 1. Okay. So it's just an way of interpretation. Next, let us discuss some examples on Wumpus world for how the facts of Wumpus world can be represented using first order logic. Okay. So here is an example. Percept, that is the agent is perceiving these things at this point of time. It is perceiving stench, it is perceiving breeze, it is perceiving glitter. So basically it can perceive 5 things. It can perceive stench, breeze, glitter. Apart from that, it can also sense bump. So it can sense bump if it hits on the wall, and it can sense the screaming sound of the wumpus if the wumpus get killed. But currently it is not sensing bump and it is not sensing screaming. But it has sensed these 3 things. In a particular room, the agent has sensed stench, breeze, and glitter. At time 5, this 5 represents a timestamp, at what time it has sensed this. Right? So using first order logic, what the agent is sensing can be represented something like this, right? And the actions that the agent can perform can be represented something like this. Turn off right, which makes the agent to turn right. Turn left, which makes the agent to turn left. Forward, for moving forward. Shoot, to shoot the wumpus. Grab, to grab the gold. Climb, to climb upon something, right? Okay. To determine which is the best action at a given time, if the agent want to know that what is the best action at a given percept, the agent can apply this query. Ask where's all squares, there exists a best action. There exists A, which is a best action at for the percept sensed at time 5. So this is the percept sensed at time 5. So for this percept, is there is a best action available in the knowledge base, like that we can query the knowledge base. Now for this, the knowledge base obviously will return something like this. So if you query like this to the knowledge base, which means the agent is asking like, for this particular percept, what I have perceived at time 5, what would be the best action, like that we are asking the knowledge base, and the knowledge base will return something like this, a comma grab. So the best action at this point of time is to grab. To grab what? There is only one best action. So this a represents there is a best action. If there are more best action, it may say B, C, all those things. So there is only one best action, and that is to grab. Grab what? Grab the gold. Because even though it is sensing stench, breeze, and glitter, so our priority is for glitter, right? So if glitter is there, it means gold is there. So take it, right? So similarly, the raw percept data implies certain facts about the current state. So from the perception, the agent can derive some facts. So here are some example. Assume that at a given point of time, this is the percept the agent is perceiving. For all t, t is at time t, S comma G comma M comma C. S represents stench, that smell. Okay. G G represents glitter. G represents glitter. Okay. M M represents, out of whatever it can sense. M represents see what it can. So I'm not sure. So M represents any one of these. Basically, it can sense all these things like stench, breeze, glitter, bump, or screaming. So so yeah. Okay. So basically, this represents for all t, that is at wherever at time t. Okay. The wherever at time t, if the agent is perceiving breeze, agent is perceiving breeze. There is only breeze. There is no stench. There is no glitter. There is no bump. Yeah, say M represents bump. There is no bump, and there is no screaming from the wumpus. So so at whichever the time the agent senses only breeze and it does not sense anything else, then we can conclude that breeze at time t, at those times there is only breeze. Similarly, at whichever the time the agent has sensed only glitter, there is no stench, there is no breeze, there is no bump, and there is no, what do you call, there is no screaming. So in all those times we can conclude that it is glitter, right? So basically, this statement says that from whatever the agent perceives, from this we can infer certain facts. Right? Apart from this, we can also represent certain reflex behavior using first order logic. For example, if you want to say that whenever there is a glitter, whenever the agent perceives a glitter, the best action is to grab that. So for all t, at any time t, if the agent senses glitter of t, at time t, if the agent senses glitter, then the best action is to grab, grab that t. Okay, right? So, so that's what it says. Okay. So perform grab at a time t. So here is another example. Adjacency of any two squares can be defined. So if you recall, actually in proportional logic, if you want to represent that some square is adjacent of some other square, actually you have to code that for every room. But here we need not do that. We can represent just using one statement using first order logic. So if you want to represent that some square is adjacent of some other square, then that can be represented something like this. For all x comma y comma a comma b, adjacent of x comma y comma A comma B, which means that XY is adjacent to AB. How can we represent this? So this is bidirectionally equivalent to saying that either X is equal to A, see X is equal to A and Y is equal to B minus 1 or Y is equal to B plus 1, right? So that is how we define the adjacency, right? So adjacency means both the squares will be either in the same row or in the same column. The row will be same. So one is the row can be same and the column may differ by one number, or the column will be same and the row will be differ by one number. So this is one option. X is equal to A. If X is equal to A, then Y should be 1 less than B or 1 greater than B. So and Y is equal to B minus 1 or Y is equal to B plus 1. Or Y can be equal to B, or another option is Y can be equal to B and X is equal to 1 less than A or X is 1 greater than A, right? So this is how we can represent adjacency in the Wumpus world. Okay. And as per our example, if you see Wumpus is placed in one location and Wumpus won't move. So in the original example we have discussed there, I think Wumpus is in location 1, 3. So if you want to represent that Wumpus is at location 2, 2 and it will be always there, then you can represent something like this. For all t at Wumpus of 2, t 2, 2, t, which means Wumpus will be at location 2, t 2, 2 for all time t. Wumpus will be at location 2, 2 for all time t. Okay. So we can also say that objects can only be at one location at a time. So if an object is at particular location at time t, then it cannot be in some other location at the same time t. So whether it is object or agent, whatever it may be, they can present only at one location at a given time. And that fact can be represented something like this. For all x, s1, s2, t, right? Where s1 is a state, s2 is a state. If x is at s1 at time t, if x is at s1 at time t, and also if x is at s2 at time t, actually this cannot happen. It implies that s1 is equal to s2. Okay. By this we are saying that the object x cannot present at two different states at the same time. If they present at two different states at the same time, then it means that the two states are same. So by this we are indirectly conveying that the object cannot present at two places at the same time. They can be present at only one location at a given time, right? Okay. Similarly, we can also represent that if the agent uh, if the agent is at a square and perceives a breeze, then the square is breezy, right? So it's a very basic fact. For all s comma t, for all s comma t, at agent of s comma t, that is agent is at state yes. Agent is at state yes at time t, and agent perceives breeze, and there is breeze at time t, which implies that there is breeze at state x, state yes. Here state represents the room. State represents the room. Okay. So state represents the room or floor. So at the room at the room S, agent is experiencing breeze at time t, right? Currently the agent is at room S at time t, and it is experiencing breeze. Now we can conclude that that particular state is breezy. So it is not that only at time t it will be breezy. No, at all times it will be breezy only. Okay. Next, the agent can deduce where the pits are and where the and obviously where the Wumpus also, by using something, a statement, something like this. So so this is so 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 this is one of the advantage of FOL. Even complex statements also we can just represent in one single line. So for all s breezy of s, so here s represents a particular floor. If a particular floor, say 1, 1 or 2, 2 or 3, 2, if it is breezy, then it means that there is a pit in the adjacent cell. Then it's bidirectionally equivalent to there exists an or such that R is adjacent to S, there exists an R such that R is adjacent to S and R is PT, and R is and pit of R, and there is a pit at R. Okay. So breeze of S is bidirectionally equivalent to saying that there exists an R such that R is adjacent to S and R contains pit. Okay. Similarly, we can also represent the axiom for arrow. See, axioms are basic facts from which other facts are derived. So those are called as axioms. So the axiom for the arrow can be represented like this. For all t, have arrow at t plus 1. If the agent is having arrow at t plus 1, then it means what? The agent has not used the arrow at time t. For all t, have arrow of t plus 1 is bidirectionally equivalent to have arrow at t and not using that arrow. So have arrow at t and not, the shoot action has not taken place at time t. Okay. If the shoot action has not taken place at time t and the agent is holding arrow at time t, then the agent will also have arrow at time t plus 1. Okay. If the shoot action has taken place, then the agent will not be having arrow at time t plus 1. Then it will become not have arrow of t plus 1. That you can try representing. Okay. So if the agent shoots, then at time t plus 1 he will not have arrow. This you can try to represent that using first order logic. Similarly, you can also try this. For example, here the agent can deduce where the pits are by using breezy of S. Similarly, the agent can deduce where the umpus is by using stench of S. So for all S, stench of S implies what? That means that there will be some adjacent cell. There is a umpus is there that you can try to write it down. Okay, fine. So that's it about using first order logic. So basically here we have discussed some examples on first order logic, like how certain facts or knowledge can be represented using first order logic. Fine, let's stop here. Thank you.